Well, good evening, everybody. Councillors, executive staff, in our gallery this evening. Good to see you all. And those online, welcome to Council's ordinary meeting for February and our first meeting for 2025. To open the meeting, could I ask everybody... Sorry, I'll go to you, Ken. Could the General Manager please outline the conduct of the meeting?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The meeting is being live streamed and or recorded for on-demand viewing via Council's website. Attendance at the meeting is to be taken as consent by a person to have their image and or voice webcast. All speakers should refrain from making any defamatory comments or releasing personal information about another individual without their consent. Council accepts no liability for any damage that may result from defamatory comments made by persons attending meetings. All liability will rest with the individuals who made the comments. The meeting must not be recorded by others without prior written consent of the Council in accordance with Council's Code of Meeting Practice. Councillors and staff are obligated to declare conflicts of interest as required under the Local Government Act 1993 and Council's adopted Code of Conduct. Councillors are reminded of their oath of office, whereby they have declared and affirmed that they will undertake the duties of the office of councillors in the best interests of the people of Wentworth Shire and the Wentworth Shire Council, and they will faithfully, impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in them under the Local Government Act or any act to the best of their ability and judgment. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. Okay, for those who are able, could we stand please for the prayer and acknowledgement? Councillors, let us in silence reflect upon our responsibilities to the community which we represent and to all future generations, and faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in us to the best of our skill and judgment. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we live and work and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Now, while we're still standing, I'd just like to reflect on the sad passing this week of Councillor Dave Gallagher from Broken Hill City. Dave was a councillor since 2011. He's been the chair of the Western Division Councils and represented Wentworth in that capacity since for the past 10 years. He was a policeman serving in Broken Hill for 33 years, and we would like to, on behalf of our council, extend our condolences to Broken Hill City, to their councillors, to Dave's family, his colleagues, and just take a moment to reflect on Mr. Gallagher. Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, item 3, please. Apologies and applications. I have notice from Councillor Elstone has withdrawn his leave of absence for this evening and joins us online. Thank you, Councillor Elstone. I've received leave of absence for Councillors Evans and Rodder for this evening's meeting. Are there any other leave of absence? Okay, could I have someone to move that we accept those for this evening? Thanks, Councillor Armstrong. Seconded, Councillor Crisp. All in favour? That's carried. Item 4, disclosures of interest. Are there any disclosures of interest?
Mr Mayor, I wish to disclose a less than significant non-pecuniary interest in item 9.13, and that's that I'm on the Kumala Action Team who have applied for $400 odd worth of assistance.
Thank you, Councillor Crisp. Councillor Nichols.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mine is 916, pecuniary over close relative who is serviced by the NDIS, and it may be seen my vote may be influenced by need.
Thank you, Councillor Nichols. Okay, we'll move on. I would like to seek a mover that we suspend the ordinary meeting to move for the purposes of moving into a public forum.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Crisp. Is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Starrick. All those in favour? That's carried. Okay, we have a public forum this evening to deal with items 9.16 and 9.17. We have 3 speakers to speak to each item. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to speak, and then there'll be councillors can ask questions of the speaker. The speaker isn't obliged to answer, but if they wish to, they have a further minute to articulate their answer. So we'll start with item 9.16, and I'll just out of courtesy to everybody, I know this is an important debate we're going to have this evening, so I just request that everybody be mindful of their language so that we don't have any issues of defamatory conduct that we have to deal with. So I'm sure everybody understands that. Okay, first up, Mr. Jamie Simmons will speak to item 9.16. If you'd like to address from the front, just sort of near Peter and George, if that suits you.
Peter and George. Sorry, guys. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Please refer to my handout for all verified references. New South Wales legislation states a consent authority must not refuse consent to a development for the purposes of a group home unless the consent authority has made an assessment of the community need for the group home. Group home singular, we're talking about a plural cluster of group homes. It's clear in the minutes that planning has not made a thorough community assessment on the need for the use of this property and all others in this cluster while aligning to Council's ethos of conducting themselves in an open, transparent manner. Please do this. I object to the home directly affecting us. You have a detailed copy here. Based on our safety, our security, our privacy concerns, the impact to our right and peace, quiet and enjoyment of our property, the safety of the preschool directly affected, potential damage to my property and increased traffic and noise. Planning presented nothing but general opinion and no empirical data to prove otherwise. I believe it can't be allowed. Backing my safety concerns, legislation states high needs clients also fall into the other categories including substance abuse issues, incarceration, homelessness, saying that these individuals often pose a risk to themselves and the community. Adding an increase in antisocial behaviour, criminal activity with multiple complex needs is very common. It's in the legislation, I'm not making it up, and I don't think that can be ignored. We have a real life example already in Summer Drive across the road with an arson attack, not just a fire, an arson attack, and personal risk to neighbours having already occurred. On page 7 of this week's Sunraysia Daily, I'm sure you all read it, there was 2 arson attacks from high need clients. I can give you the number of the carer, the NDIS carer who was actually at the house at the time. NDIS themselves have identified the need for 4 clients in our entire region. This cluster has a minimum of 44 plus a potential of more. I see it as greed at best, community benefit, absolute zero. Planning has obviously missed the legislation regarding the use of these dwellings, in my opinion. You'll set a precedent for future cluster group home developers, namely the 25 acres sitting behind Murray, the Midway Centre. It looks like the intent could create something like a Hornsey Park 2.0 right here in Baronga. I'm not happy about it. At no stage has our community been consulted or transparency occurred on the use of these properties. I propose this house and group cluster stop until a full review has been conducted on the impact to all stakeholders. My concern is the impact of use of this group home cluster on my property, and everybody else is here for the purpose that I just stated. I implore you to do a right thing, just conduct a proper community assessment before allowing this development to go ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie. Does any councillor have a question for Mr. Simmons?
Questions, yes, please.
Jamie, thanks for your presentation. You mentioned that the NDIS shows a need for 4 places.
Yeah.
The Broken Hill Far West region actually shows 18, so 8 currently and 10
So
more.
in your current LGA, it's 4.
No. So we fit within the NDIS guidelines. We fit under Broken Hill Far West.
So let Broken Hill build theirs. Because I'm
just questioning. So you've said
contacted NDIS and seen.
Yeah, that's in their statistics.
Yeah, okay. Have you seen what they say about the removal or the location of their clients? Their location matters, and they want people to stay where they want to stay. So you're saying you're going to build the houses here and make everyone from Broken Hill come here. Is that what you're saying to the NDIS clients?
Mr. Mayor, no, I think that's
I'll just get you to couch that in a statement rather than a question. So that's
I was asked a question, so sorry, I didn't know.
No, that's
I
fine.
didn't know the rules on questions.
Yeah, no, sorry. So councillors can ask questions, and
apologies.
no, that's fine. So
Okay, so reading NDIS, one of our participants and family members here have actually spoke to NDIS head office legislation department, and have asked the questions that you're asking. One of the things that they want is for the client to make the decision where they live. Moving them from one town to another is not a desirable thing. It's up to the client, not up to us. And so the need here is, they've identified 4 in our LGA. It covers a region of over 43,000 kilometres when you look at our LGA. And so it is a large cluster for a small number of need at the moment. I'm not denying the need for SDA homes, by the way, on the record. We understand that it's needed, but do we need a cluster of so many in one area when there are more issues behind the SDA high client needs people? And it's there's no easy solution, guys. You're stuck in a rock between a rock and a hard place. But the reality is, this is not, spread them out. There's a couple of good blocks on Caramar Drive. Stick one at each end up there. Down in Golgol, there's plenty of developments to spread this out, but to put them in a cluster, I don't think will do these guys justice. It doesn't, according to NDIS. I could give you more data on that information from the conversations we've had and from everything that we've studied. That's what I believe the community assessment should be doing, finding out who they're serving as a community and the real needs on that. And I don't think that's been done.
thank you. Thanks very much, Jamie. Does anyone else have a question for Jamie? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, next to present is Mrs. Sue Matalik. Sorry if I've mispronounced your surname.
That's all right. I know who I am. Okay, Mr. Mayor, so my objections is to the group dwelling DA 2024-156 that's coming on the back of my property. This is the second application I received notice of. I didn't object to the first one. I'm an inclusive, social-minded community member. One NDIS house on my back fence, okay, I can live with that. The second one coming in beside it on my back fence a few weeks later, that made me take notice. And that's when I discovered all that were being applied for and all that were being put into a small space behind my home. So the points I want to make, and that is safety and security issues, livability and amenity, inclusive community, and health and hygiene and traffic. Safety and security, Jamie has already pointed out some of the issues with these residents. I live alone and have lived safely there for 25 years. I've seen what's gone on over the road, and I am really stressed and concerned that I may have those residents on my back fence. Every home that goes in has 3 residents. The risk factor is a multiplier of 3 for every home. I've had 3, I've got 6, I've got 9 on the other, another 3 on the other. That's 9 times the risk of these sorts of things. The livability and amenity. 6 residents in 2 group dwellings, plus carers, support workers, family, friends, visiting, medical, allied health, emergency vehicles. This area will become noisy and intrusive to the peaceful enjoyment and livability of my property and the neighbours. So Council is facilitating an isolated cluster of NDIS group dwellings. And to this I go to the inclusive community and the Council's own inclusive, disability inclusive plan. So this dwelling behind me is sandwiched between 2 previously applied NDIS group dwellings. And the NDIS guidelines for location of disability residents is not suitable because it isolates the residents in that middle dwelling between 2 other dwellings of NDIS residents at the end of a court in a street that's got no other way in and out. They're herded like sheep up the end. So I'm saying that's not giving them inclusive. The subdivision itself is isolated. We don't have a connection to the township of Baronga. We don't have a connection to the township of Golgol. We have a community centre. No wheelchair's going to make it down to the Midway supermarket from these homes. There are no allied health services in Midway and they barely exist this side of the border. Community residents are objecting en masse to the cluster of these group dwellings in Midway and and Wendy Court. So the point I'm making there, you don't have a welcoming community for your disability residents right here and now. And yet you state in your disability plan that you will, inclusion plan has statements in there about the inclusion and not being isolated. So I'm making that point. Health and hygiene.
Thank you, Sue.
Well, okay.
Sorry, I've just got to be impartial with the timing. So,
It's a bit of rush for 3 minutes.
no, it is. So, given that Sue didn't quite get to finish her presentation, does anybody have any questions regarding that content? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Travis O'Donnell. Thanks, Travis. You'll have 3 minutes as well.
Let's start now. Yep. Mr. Mayor, councillors, Planning Department, I object to this DA and all other group home developments within Midway Estate and to highlight serious oversights in statutory compliance, planning, governance, and call for immediate corrective action. My concern is the disregard for proper urban planning principles, infrastructure thresholds and public planning measures taken on this group home cluster as follows. Please also see Jamie Simmons' submission of documentation for referencing. Section 2.23 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act requires community participation in decision making, yet Midway residents have been excluded. Approvals have been granted incrementally to bypass broader consultation, with only direct neighbours notified, deliberately avoiding scrutiny under large-scale planning provisions. Section 4.15 mandates council assess site suitability, yet no precinct-wide review has been done for this group home cluster. No traffic, emergency service or law enforcement impact studies have been made public. These are statutory requirements. Best practice planning principles require cumulative impact assessments to manage strain on infrastructure, emergency services and social cohesion. No such assessment has been transparently conducted, despite the evident clustering of developments. These developments come with high service demand, including support workers, case managers, medical professionals, emergency services, leading to an unsustainable increase in daily vehicle movement. High support housing often results in frequent call-outs to law enforcement, paramedics and crisis response teams. This will increase demand on our already stretched services. Given these statutory failures, the current approach to approving this cluster of group homes must be restructured immediately. A maximum cap of 2 group homes developments per street should be enforced through a legally binding planning instrument. This would prevent oversaturation of any one community, preferring fair and proportional distribution across the Shire. Allow for proper integration of infrastructure and public safety measures without overwhelming local resources. Preserve the character and livability of established residential areas. I call for immediate suspension on all further group housing approvals in Midway Estate until necessary reforms are made. The Local Government Act and planning regulations grant councils the power to halt approvals when there is non-compliance or excessive strain on resources. Midway Estate was planned and developed as a family-friendly residential community, and the unchecked approval of this group housing cluster is a direct contradiction of that vision. The planning process has been flawed from the beginning, ignoring statutory requirements, failing in transparency, the flawed notification process, and disregarding legitimate concerns of the residents who have built their lives here. I urge the council to reject these DA applications, revoke current approvals that fail to meet standards, and implement strict limits on further developments. The long-term plan should be for all of Midway Estate to remain a safe, livable community for all. The planned 11 and up to 25 group homes is a clear oversight and does not align with the best interests of our community. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for Travis?
Not the Travis, but could we have the planning officer say what notifications are necessary under legislation?
George, a question to you. In terms of our notification plan and policy, what's our obligation for a single dwelling?
For a single dwelling, we are only required to notify the adjoining landholders only. We don't need to notify anyone else in the surrounding area.
So that answer your question.
Yeah, it's just because if everybody's raising the notification, and I thought perhaps January wasn't known, so that sort of answers to so everybody knows what the notification requires. That's why everybody hasn't got a letter.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Travis, you're a resident in
Wendy Court, yes. So, yeah, concerns there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Weeding.
You said up to 25 group homes. Where did you get that number from?
From the General Manager at our second meeting on a Wednesday at the Hub.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons.
25 plus. Oh, sorry.
No, that's
misunderstanding.
Sorry.
All right. Any further questions for?
So,
Thank
cheers,
you.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next up, we're going to hear from Travis on item 9.17. Welcome back, Travis. This is dealing with items.
Thanks, guys. Mr. Mayor, Councillors and Planning Department, I object to this DA, a modification to the garage as part of an ongoing pattern of developments that are unsuitable for Midway Estate. While this particular modification might seem minor, it is yet another step in the approval of group homes, which have no place in a family-centric community like ours. Midway Estate was designed to be a peaceful residential area. The introduction of these high-demand housing projects places significant strain on the local infrastructure and disrupts the lifestyle of long-standing residents. With limited resources and services, our community cannot accommodate further developments of this nature without sacrificing safety, privacy, and overall livability. The Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, along with the Local Government Act, mandates that councils thoroughly assess the compatibility of developments with the surrounding area. This includes ensuring that any development does not place undue pressure on local infrastructure or compromise the well-being of residents. The introduction of group homes to a family-focused neighbourhood undermines these obligations and violates the trust of residents who are placed in the council to protect the integrity of their community. Local Government Act 93 mandates that councils act in the best interest of the local community. Look around this room, you see us standing here, speaking not just for ourselves, but for those who couldn't be here today and the ones here supporting us. We are the community, and we are telling you these developments do not align with what is right for our area. I firmly believe this is a case of exploiting a system designed for genuine integration, not domination. What was meant to be a balanced and inclusive approach has turned into an unchecked takeover, disregarding the voices of those who actually live here. I urge the council to halt their further approvals of group homes in Midway Estate, including this modification. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. Any questions on that item, councillors? All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Sue again.
I'll pass on my opportunity to speak if that's all right. I think there's someone else still coming to speak. Am I able to do that, or no? I can't. All right.
There is a third speaker, Mr. McQuay.
Oh, well, that's all right.
But you have opportunity to speak.
I'll finish what I didn't get time to finish before. That's okay. So I was addressing the disability inclusion plan, and I'd like to quote that welcoming an inclusive community for disability residents is stated in the plan. So the council has a responsibility to provide a welcoming and inclusive community for disability residents. We're not being welcoming if they're being forced in large numbers. The health and hygiene. Green bin, 1 green bin per 3 residents plus carers for each dwelling. Proper disposal of medical and associated waste, which will include hypodermic syringes, incontinence, wounds, all sorts of medical things that may be required within an NDIS high support needs dwelling. 1 green bin. That poses risks to health to the community and children. Traffic. All support services to disability enter and exit Wendy Court. The Jack and Jill Childcare Centre is located at the junction of Wendy Court and Midway Drive. The assessment is heavy increase of traffic, emergency vehicles exacerbating congestion and children's safety, and parents have written letters to alert council. There is a duty of care. Council's assessment process should determine the impact on neighbours and community of the Midway subdivision. Engage, involve and inform the whole community in achieving a more inclusive society. That's a disability inclusion plan. They've not properly consulted or assessed the impacts of this DA and other group dwellings in Midway or engaged with the community. Therefore, this DA and the other DAs for NDIS group dwellings need to be stopped. Thank you.
Any further questions for Sue? Okay, thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from Mr. Matt McWay, please.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Matthew McWay, and I recently bought and built my first house in Wendy Court. I'm pretty proud of it. When considering purchasing my land back in 2021, I recall the subdivision being advertised as ideally suited to families wishing to build their dream homes, quiet and family oriented. Now that my brother and I have made considerable financial commitment to build our home, that original promise seems to have been betrayed because the permanent home developments basically taking over our street. Speaking with NDIS officials here in Mildura, they stated that typically participants do not like to socialise. They keep to themselves. This would clearly have a negative impact on the social amenity of the local community. I am one of 4 residential homes in the subdivision, and I really look forward to seeing it grow and become a family-friendly community. My brother and I have already met and made great friends with Travis and Yuko up the road. And we want more of that in our court. The proposed flood of group housing is set to overwhelm the area, will surely ruin our dream of living in a quiet, friendly neighbourhood where we can build relationships with the community. I understand that my acceptance to speak relates to the garage extension on number 24 Midway Drive. However, may I ask, you might be asking why there's 13 people have lodged an objection to this. It is clear that they're using this opportunity to object to the NDIS house that's being built there. And to my mind, that is clearly basically because nobody has been told about it. The first one that went through, we got no notification. I found out when Sue knocked on my door that any of this was happening. I've lost my voice, I apologise. It's clear that we're using this opportunity to object because there was no notification provided to anyone in the original DA application. In my mind, this is clearly in conflict with WSC's community participation plan, more specifically the objectives and actions under Table 2 and 3 entitled Community Participation Objectives. And I refer councillors to read that. I've got a copy if you need it. In saying that, the site plan submitted with the request to modify this block does not comply with the building setback from the side boundaries as required under Wentworth DCP. DCP 4.14 states to ensure satisfactory side setback distance to protect general amenity to the adjoining properties, a minimum of 1 metre and a combined total of 4.5 metres is stipulated. Trying to keep going on.
Finish off that sentence, Matthew. Yeah.
The house submitted with this request to modify the DA has a combined total boundary setback of only 3.87 metres. This is less than the 4.5 metres minimum required and must be rejected by council on that basis. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Any questions for Matthew? All right, thank you very much.
Well, Matthew.
Okay, I'll now seek a mover that we resume ordinary meeting. Mr. Mayor, I would move that we resume back to our ordinary meeting. I'd also, in that same motion, move that we amend the order of business so that items 9.16 and 9.17 are moved in the order so that they are dealt with prior to 9.1. Just, with the respect that we have quite a full gallery here, just for their comfort, rather than them sit through all the business of council
that we could deal with their issues that everyone's here for first.
Okay, so you'd like to move 9.16 and 9.17 up the order to
before
beginning of
9.1.
reports to council.
Yep.
And could I very kindly request that you also, in your motion,
Yes.
ask that we admit late item 12.4, water treatment plants and raw water pump
Also move
stations options
that.
assessment contract.
I would also move that one as well, Mr. Mayor. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Is the motion seconded? Thanks, Councillor Crisp. Those in favour? That is carried. Okay. We'll move to item 5, confirmation of minutes. Would someone like to move to confirm the minutes? Councillor Nichols, thank you. Seconded. Councillor Armstrong. Any questions? Any discussion? All those in favour of accepting the minutes? Thank you, that's carried. Item 6, any outstanding matters from the previous meeting? Just catch up with the old paperwork here. There are no matters. I'll move to item 7 and move my mayoral report. Someone would like to second that? Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Any questions?
Is there any note that you'd like to share, Mr. Mayor?
Oh, it's been a busy period. What have we got here? I did get smacked with the cat o' nine tails with the Roy Malloy author talk, but that's probably not significant. The Sturt Highway Task Force meeting, we hosted that last week, and that included representatives from councils right along the length of the Sturt Highway in New South Wales. I think that's going to be a really useful forum for identifying priorities within our own LGA, but also how we can work together as a group of councils that has the Sturt running through it. So that was very good. Yes, had the pleasure of welcoming a delegation of executives from JQ Mining, a Japanese-based company, who were in the LGA today to inspect the RZ resources. So that's a welcome development there. That we'll see how that goes into the future. Okay. I'll move that report be accepted. Those in favour? Seconded was by Councillor Crisp. No councillor reports. No reports from committees. We'll move to item 9.16. Sorry, I'll just find that. We're going to skip to item 9.16. Okay, so obviously we've had a very productive public forum, and we've heard from members of the public regarding this item. Permanent Group Home, 20 Wendy Court in Taronga. Would someone like to move a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that DA 2024/156 for a permanent group home to be located at 20 Wendy Court, Lot 17, DP 1288183 Baronga, lie on the table.
Thanks, Councillor Crisp. Is the motion seconded? Councillor Armstrong? Would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Essentially, I think that this proposal is not fair, it's not right, but it's legal, and therein lies our conundrum to deal with. And I think what we need to look at this proposal is it's to provide for those who cannot provide for themselves, and that is consistent with our obligations under numerous parts in our charter. I do want to expand on that fair. So we have to be fair in what we provide. We need to understand why NDIS clients want to live in a neighbourhood, and that's been touched on by some of the submissions here. And I believe that for many of them, despite what Mildura may have said, do want to experience the sounds and activity of a community in a welcoming environment. And to be fair, it must be for the neighbourhood to want to maintain its social cohesion. And I want to explore a little bit about social cohesion here. And I've done a little bit of research with a Monash University report by Dr. James O'Donnell, and I think some of this will probably not surprise most people, that our national cohesion is declining, but our neighbourhood cohesion is growing. And this is to do with our neighbourhood. So in neighbourhoods, people want to belong in their neighbourhood, and we have evidence of that tonight. And by belonging, you have a sense of pride in life and culture. And that's what I think both the people who have a disability want to be involved in, and those who want to live there want to promote that environment. So what's being proposed here, and part of the reason lying on the table, we do need to test all of this against our Wentworth Shire Council's disability inclusion plan. Now, so what is a fair balance to maintain social cohesion? Really good question. 76 pages later, my head hurt, and there was no number. I was looking for that number of houses or that percentage. But there's a whole lot of talk about it, but no one wants to commit themselves to a number. But we've heard that various information has been provided about the number that is required, and it appears to be around 4. What I did find that a useful statistic in this is that social housing in Australia is around 4.1%. So, and if you want to have social cohesion, you've got to, I think, use that figure homogeneously across the housing. Now, having said all this, I don't think it's right to exceed that figure in any one place because of how important neighbourhood cohesion is. However, we also know in Council's defence that the planning law is pretty clear, and that's that legal issue we have, is that from a planning perspective, none of that really needs to be taken into consideration, which is the legal. So our staff have made the legally correct recommendation, and there'll be legal consequences if it's ignored. So, and local government is a creature of state government, and I understand that there has been an approach to the local member, but I noticed that in the presentations, the local member at this stage, by the silence, hasn't found a remedy to this within the law. Yeah, not an unexpected result from someone who's a politician, or former politician, I should say. So, if there's not a remedy to rectify this, or if we want a remedy, it's got to be rectified by the law, and that will not be an easy process. But to sum up why I want this to lie on the table is that neighbourhood cohesion is really important, and it's about supporting and caring for each other and cohesive neighbourhoods where the balance is right. And we've heard a lot, and this is a very difficult decision. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Any further speakers for the motion?
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I support Councillor Crisp's motion in this. I totally reflect his sentiment around the fairness of this development. While taken on its own, in isolation, planning within their bounds to determine the way they have However, I think as we as councillors look at how this development sits within the whole community of Midway especially, I think more time needs to be taken to understand the impacts and to do a proper assessment of the community need and the community impact that while this is a uniquely individual development, combined with the others that have already been approved or are to be approved, creates a concentration within a community of something that is required, at a broader sense, right? We do require NDIS group housing across our shire and across our region, but I think that we need to find as a council a better way to approach this so that we aren't foisting this concentration of group homes on those residents who have chosen to live in that street or in that community. We need to find a way to do better in this space to support our disability action plan, but spread that demand and that burden, not that it is a burden, but that's just a technical term, across our shire as a whole and not concentrated in one location. I think we as a council should work with those who would look to develop these facilities and how they can be best situated across our whole shire and not concentrated. I'd also note that in 2020, 2021, the NDIS undertook its own inquiry, which bureaucracies don't normally do, into SDA housing. And their recommendation from that was that the design guidelines for the houses and the regulations for operators should be totally reviewed and rewritten. And they are in that process, and we don't yet have those new standards. So while this lies on the table, for the reasons Councillor Crisp has mentioned, I think we should work with the government and with the developer to make sure that any new SDA housing that is built in the Shire will conform with those future standards and not with the ones that the NDIS itself have said are not up to scratch.
Thanks, Councillor. A question through the chair. So it'll be just a question from me to you, Councillor Armstrong. Any timeframes associated with that review that you're...
No, so the review was completed in 2021. The inquiry was the NDIS commissioner came out in 2023 to say that they were going to rewrite them, and they still are not out, right? So as you know, all bureaucracies are, they're a little bit slow. But I think we should reach out to the Minister's office and get an update to see if there is a timeline on that.
Okay, thank you. And a question to Councillor Crisp. Did you, just for clarification, did you nominate a period of time which you'd like it to be laid on the table, or?
Yes, till the next meeting.
Okay. Thank you. All right, any further speakers? All right, just checking Councillor Elstone, but his hand is down. So Councillor Starrick.
I'm also of the view that we need a bit more information to be able to make a decision as councillors. There's been a bit of reference in the material, multiple pieces of material in regards to the guidelines of NDIS. So a question to the GM, is council planning bound by any of those NDIS guidelines?
My understanding is that they're the provider's guidelines and not so much the provision of the housing or the built infrastructure. So I'd say that in this case, the guidelines as nominated in the references would be in relation to the service provision, not the provision of the built structures.
And is the service provider a party to the development application?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
So the development application is not bound by those guidelines by virtue of not. If it is under the NDIS guidelines, the provider who is the one bound, and the provider is not a party to the development, there's a disconnect there in terms of the application of the guidelines, would there not?
I'd agree with that, yes.
Yep. So I just feel like there's, when, as has been spoken, we need to understand within our area more about the demand, and I'm also interested in terms of what is a group home. Under the planning perspective, is there a definition of what is a is it under the planning that they define group homes, or how does that come through?
If I may, between George and I, we'll try and definition of group homes. George comes within the housing sector.
It's within the LMP.
Yep.
And if you go to page 418 of the report, it gives you the definition of the group home.
Just for the benefit of anyone listening, that says that what George has pointed to, group home means a permanent group home. Group homes are a type of residential accommodation.
Yeah, I feel like we need more information in terms of more opportunity to investigate the demand of the area and how this is fitting in with this specific location.
Thank you, Councillor Starrick. Are there any further speakers? Councillor William? No?
I think everything's been said.
Okay. Now, noting that there haven't been any speakers against Councillor Crisp, and we've heard a lot about our obligations with our own disability inclusion plan and the legal parameters which planning have guided us to a recommendation. Did you wish to sum up the debate with anything further?
No, nothing further to add, but just to make the comment we have quite a bit of work to do.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. I'll put the motion. Those in favour of the motion? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We'll move to item 9.17, modified development consent for permanent group home, 24 Midway Drive, Baronga. Would someone like to move a motion? Oh, I beg your pardon. The item 9.16, as a planning matter, the vote that we took was for the purposes of a division, and all names will be recorded for and against. I don't plan to redo the vote. I think that explanation will suffice. Okay, so back to item 9.17. Do I have anybody wish to move a motion? Councillor Crisp.
Thank you. I move that Council approve for the modification of DA 2024/056 group home to be located at Midway Drive on the lots specified in the recommendations. This one takes us into the bounds of what legally we can and cannot do. This one has been approved, and unfortunately, whatever we might think, we can't undo that without considerable consequences on the council, and therefore all of us who are within the LGA area.
Right, I'll just say that's an explanation of why you've moved. I'll seek a seconder and then I'll ask you. Councillor Starrick is seconding the motion. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Crisp?
I think preemptively I've said what has to be said, but I think we have to support this one, like it or not.
Thank you, Councillor. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Would anyone further like to speak for the motion?
Yes, Mr.
Councillor Armstrong.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I would speak in support of this motion, and I get that there has been there is a lot of community sentiment around this, I understand the concerns around it, but Councillor Crisp is quite correct. This development has already been approved, and this is a modification. So there's very little grounds for council to go back on that. So I think that, you know, for the completion of process, that council should move this way.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. There's no one further seeking the call. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously, and as a planning matter is considered a division, and therefore all votes for and against will be recorded. Thank you very much. That concludes item 9.17. Now,
Might I propose we have a brief adjournment to allow the members of the gallery who may wish to leave at this point to be able to.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Crisp. Is that motion seconded? Thank you. All those in favour? And can I thank the gallery and everyone in attendance for the way it's been conducted.
the whole lot rather than a recommendation.
Would you like to speak? Would anyone like to speak for the motion? Councillor Crisp.
In speaking to this motion, I've had a number of consultations with the men in the shed. I'd like to see them moved in by the time the first anniversary of the official opening has occurred. What they don't have at this stage is all the internal electrics that they need, and that's around that $60,000 figure, finishes off all the internal work so that not only can they move in because they've met the planning requirements to occupy it, they can actually do all the things they want to do in the shed when they move in. And that's why want to do this, get them in the shed, and then we know then as a council we can tick this off as a project that has been completed. It's been a very long walk for the men in the shed, and we for other reasons too would like to move on the Early Settlers Museum as the next large project for the Denton community, and the men in the shed are currently located in the museum site. So being able to get them out of there so that the Early Settlers Museum can get on with that, get on with what they want to do. And I have been recently informed by the Secretary of the museum that they've cleared the changes to their constitution. They've got their been identified as a charity, got their tax deductibility virtually through. So they're in a position where they want to get on with developing that site. But while it's currently occupied by men in the shed, that too is a restriction. So I know it's more than the recommendation, but it gets this project completed, gets it moved in, and gets them active. And I think that's a very good reason for councillors to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Crisp. Would anyone like to speak against the motion?
Just a question.
Councillor Elstone, speaking against?
No, I'm not speaking against it. Just a general question, perhaps to Simon or to Ken, or even Councillor Chris. Is this it? Like, is this the end of it? Is there any more to be spent on the men in shed after now, in terms of funding?
Yep. In the lobbying from their treasurer and secretary, they told me that if this was that would be it for council. So I think we probably need to, wisely, as you suggest, Tim, is that if we pass this motion in the letter, we make it clear that that's it.
Thanks, Councillor Crisp. Thanks, Councillor Elstone. I have a question from Councillor Nichols.
Yes, thank you. In the report detail, didn't we facilitate the land? Should that also be mentioned somewhere there?
It was a Crown Land Reserve for which we were trustee of, and they've got a separate licence now to occupy the site. So yeah, there was nil contribution from them to that.
Through you, where will the extra money come from? Just general. There's no problem. Okay, thank you.
Interest received. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Weeding, speaking for the motion.
It's for the motion, yes. I think it's a worthwhile $100,000 spent. This is for the firefighting that they've put in there. The firefighting pumps will not only help men in the shed, but it will help the general community, like the RSL flats and nearby properties.
Have we established that, Councillor Weeding? That'd be good if that's correct. That would be really good news.
I've been out there and had a look and was informed by men in the shed that yes, they could use that.
Oh, great! Yeah, last time I asked the question, it wasn't known. It was hoped for. So that's good news indeed.
Well, I was informed by men in the shed that would be the case.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Weeding. Any further speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 9.3. Attendance and motions for the 2025 National General Assembly of Local Government, otherwise referred to as ELGA Conference in Canberra, 24 June to 27 June. Is there a mover? Councillor Armstrong, what would you like?
I would move as the recommendation is written.
So I'll just point out, I haven't yet sought, but I will be seeking a leave of absence that covers that period. So
I would amend
to attend.
I would amend that it would read Mayor or Mayor's representative and General Manager.
Okay.
Is that lock Councillor Crispin as Deputy Mayor in case he's also busy, right?
Yep. So we're you've moved and amended.
So I would move the recommendation.
Yep.
Part A is written. Part B endorses the attendance of the Mayor or the Mayor's chosen representative and General Manager at the National General Assembly of Local Government.
Is the motion seconded? Councillor Starrick, would anyone like to speak to the motion? Welcome back, Director.
So much for the security.
Yeah.
Councillor Starrick.
I was very interested in the topics that were highlighted in here, in particular, of course, financial sustainability in regional areas. So I feel like having a voice and having the opportunity to have representatives at this, given that it is a national local government, is very beneficial.
Yes, the peak body. It's certainly, I've only been there once myself, but it's a very good experience, networking with councillors or mayors right across the country, but also having the opportunity to debate all issues pertaining to local government. All right, does anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 9.4, the draft event funding policy of 2025. So this is something that we've had on the table for a little while. I'm very pleased to see it come into the meeting. Would somebody like to move a motion?
I would move the recommendation as written, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Armstrong. Is that seconded? Councillor Starrick, does anyone wish to speak to the motion? Just point out, I had a couple of queries just in reading through it in terms of councillors' role in, it refers to an internal review panel, but I do have some responses back of late, but I think that given it's going to public exhibition, it's probably best that we just circulate amongst ourselves the questions and the answers that have been provided, and that'll provide a bit of clarity on just some definitions and things that are within it. So,
I mean, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I will speak to it. I note that we are moving it to public consultation, not accepting the policy.
Yes, that's correct. So I'm focused that I didn't have answers prior because this is the opportunity now to query anything. Councillor Crisp.
Question to the General Manager during the public exhibition, and I know there are very good reasons for this. Is there anything on the table at the moment that needs to be dealt with promptly?
The interest of future sponsorship would come from the is it Dash? I think it's called.
Sunraysia
Safari Rally, and possibly a music event in terms of Country Music Week. So the two that I can recall from my memory.
By the time we go through the public consultation process and so on, can we still deal with those matters if they have to be dealt with before this policy is enacted, or do they need to wait?
I'll take your question on notice and review the content and context and
their timelines.
And possibly refer them into the chamber for a council decision, being mindful of some of the parameters of this. In the planning world, it's okay to assess a development application on a draft instrument or whatever the case may be. Is that right, George? you take into consideration what's tabled as a draft when you're considering whatever else. So I guess in terms of this, we could table the request and give consideration how it may fit in with these draft guidelines.
Thank you. That gives me great comfort.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this item? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Rightio, item 9.5, the monthly finance report for December 2024. A recommendation there. Moved Councillor Nichols, seconded Councillor Armstrong. Does anyone wish to speak to this or have a question? And there's 2 months we'll be dealing with. Just avoid any. Sorry, Councillor Elstone.
I think I've probably asked this to Director Gunn a couple of times, but the overtime on the roads council, most of that is the Arumpo Road and the out of the grant funding.
Yes, that's correct. So a majority of the overtime, or all the overtime on the council road component is associated with the Arumpo Road. The overtime on the RMS is associated with planned and quoted works for Transport for New South Wales. And we have some other components of overtime with water and wastewater associated with the first pay period, I think, which is 12 and 13, was associated with the water main and service line breaks, and a majority of those in that 12 and 13 pay period were Golgol. And I think the second period, also that overtime in the roads is associated with the Arumpo Road works. And the overtime in the water and wastewater area is associated with the issues with water quality and blockages of filters at the Golgol water treatment plant, and associated shutdowns with that. There was also water main breaks again and service line breaks in both Golgol and Wentworth during that period, and they're all over out of hours and weekend work. So that accounts for a majority of all the overtime in those 4 pay periods.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Just a quick one to Director Rule. Just noticing that the rate collection comparisons year on year, it's not a huge difference, but it's consistently a couple of percent, and next month it grows to nearly 3% difference. And I know there's always the timing issues, but the question is, are we seeing any uptick in people having difficulty to pay their rates or applications for?
Nothing that's come across my desk at this stage, but that doesn't mean that there's not, and people just haven't reached out to us at this point in time, or it's the last thing on their mind. They've got other things that they're worried about. So yeah, that's when I did read it, I sort of thought, yeah, that's a bit of a.
It's jumped up.
Yep. I mean, last year's was out of the ordinary because we had those sale of properties the previous year, which then when they were paid inflated last year's collections as well. So there's a little bit to do with that. But yeah, I think the collections are slightly below what we would be expecting at this point in time.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. All right, any further queries? Put the motion. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. We'll move to item 9.6, which is the monthly finance report for the month of January 2025. Would someone like to move the motion? Thanks, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Starrick has seconded. Any questions? Being no questions, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. We will move to item 9.8, the monthly investment report for. Sorry, 9.7. Just skip the tab. My apologies. Monthly investment report for December 2024. Is there a mover? Councillor Crisp has moved as printed, seconded by Councillor Weeding. Are there any questions? Councillor Starrick.
I was just wondering if the grant table on page 170, would it be possible to get a grant end date in that table? It just adds context in terms of when you'd expect them to be expended, or how long we would expect to continue to carry those grants. So I was just wondering if that might be an improvement.
Yeah, some of them don't have an end date, but some of them do.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Councillor Elstone.
To Director Rule, I see the December interest was 345,000, which in a discussion with the Mayor he said that suggested that's for the quarter. Would that sound correct?
No, that was for the month. We had a fair few term deposits mature in December.
My comment was that some of the investments are paid
at the monthly time, did they?
Oh, sorry. Oh, can you just repeat that, please, Councillor?
No, I just noticed January.
Yeah.
Which one? I just noticed January was 160 odd, and that seemed, more than double. Seemed that's right, but didn't marry up with an average quarter, so that's okay. You said 8 do at once.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, and the other one is, which I've always asked, the developer contributions reserve of 1,085,000.
Yep.
And now we've got a developer contribution to every development across the district of about 1%. Do those funds go into that account?
Yep.
So, I've always thought the development contributions reserve, most of that money would come from the Barunga Gold end because of the amount of development, obviously.
Oh, over the last 10 years, that would probably be correct, yeah.
Yeah. So, but it never changes. Is there any plans to spend some of it, or are we just going to hold it?
We just missed the last bit, Councillor Elstone, but essentially asking if we've got any plans to spend it.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Don't know, I'm just the gatekeeper of the money, so spending it's not my responsibility.
Why don't you come up with a bit of some of your councillors, and I know there's been discussion about perhaps fencing some of those retention bases. There was a little fellow wrote a letter back a few years ago that wanted a park somewhere, and could we follow a few of those things up? And I was just looking at 9, 14, 15 and 16. There's about $20,000 worth of contributions in those three. So it's going to add up pretty quick with the development.
So I think Albies Park got absorbed by an expanded detention basin. Is that what happened?
What happened to it?
If I can just expand on the question, so that $1,085,000, it's not pegged to any current.
It's not restricted.
Plans that are, because there are plans.
It's restricted.
On what we can spend it on.
George, do we have a program that works for the old Section 94? What's it called now?
7.12. I think there is a program of works within.
Yeah, we'd have to review the contribution plans. They probably haven't been looked at for a few years, so we have to see what was in those contribution plans and potentially update the program of works.
Yeah, but for example,
I might suggest, Councillor Elstone, that we'll workshop that in our financial sustainability thing that's conducted by Director Rule.
That would be a very good idea, Mr. General Manager. We could probably have a discussion about the annual $1 million in that, what's that other one called, the capital projects, and nothing ever happens to either.
Thanks very much, Councillor Elstone. We'll put that on the agenda for sure. Councillor Armstrong, then Councillor Crisp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Director Rule. Just in the investment report for December, and I noticed the same thing in January, the total interest received this financial year compared to total interest expected this financial year, there's quite a significant discrepancy. So it's just got like interest received is a bit over $1 million, interest expected is 2.4 nearly.
That's only year to date, though.
Yeah, that's year to date, but that discrepancy exists. So obviously, because I thought that too initially, that total interest expected was a year to date, like a total for the year, but in January that goes up by 100,000. So
that would be the interest expected is what we're expecting to have by the end of the financial year based on our current investment portfolio.
So that's why there's a change for January because the investment portfolio.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Crisp.
The mosquito grants, and what do we do with those? What is our mosquito program?
I think our former Director of Health and Planning attained the grant. We ended up with a pallet load of Bushman's sort of slap on green, and we gave it away as sort of gift and promotion, but obviously the full amount wasn't expended. In terms of, I guess, a question of probably the workings of our past, we don't have any monitoring, we don't have any sentinel chicken flocks, we don't have any spraying or monitoring. So we'll probably need to look at the parameters around that balance of that grant and see whether it can be acquitted or
put it to better use.
I think what happened was after all those rain events in 2022 and the floods, the state government was just handing out grants to everybody for mosquito control, acknowledging that with all the water lying around, there was going to be so we were given a certain amount of money and. So that's one of those ones that doesn't have an end date, and I don't even know whether there's an obligation to return it if we don't spend it. So I don't think the government's worried about chasing up $23,000 or $23,000.
Yep, thank you.
Yes, Councillor Elstone.
Yes, Councillor Armstrong reminded me of a question I also had about that interest. Again, to Director Rule, what do we do? Does it just go into general revenue, or is that part of the plan? I'm just looking at it and thinking, well, your forecast 2.4 million, that could be paying something off if we didn't need it elsewhere.
Well, it adds to the pie of total revenue we have, which we then use to cover and pay for all of our services and our capital expenditure program and whatnot.
100,000
like 100,000 for the Median Shed. So I know. So just on that point, I know Councillor Nichols likes to talk about 2-3 years ago or 4 years ago during COVID when we only got $240,000 in investment. That goes a long way to improving our own source revenue ratio. Definitely improves our financial sustainability by having that additional revenue, and we help use it to help fund the services and the projects that we deliver.
No, it's all good if you got on for it. So we got a bit of debt and we didn't have that interest a few years ago. It would be very handy to be knocking a hole in a bit of debt.
I did pay off one loan today, so.
Hey.
Which one?
The first one, the Baronga landfill one, is about $27,000 or something like that. So it's not much, but it's one less one that we have to worry about.
One less line. Thanks, Councillor Elstone. I have a quick question for Director Rule. In our the grants table, we have the drought resilience funding balance there. Now, there's a bit of chatter in our LGA and our neighbours at Balranald around dry times and some work that needs to be done there. I'll be chairing a meeting Friday morning with stakeholders to ascertain how we can look after the community and provide some clarity. Can you provide some clarity that under the drought resilience plan that our shires have put together, that we're eligible for some grants, some further grants than what's reflected here?
We are, only to implement any of those actions that were actually included in that approved drought plan that both the state and federal governments signed off on. So and there are some parameters around what we can and can't. So we can't spend it on farm or anything that directly, like subsidies or any of those sort of things.
Okay.
So there are certain criteria what we can spend that money on if we so wish to apply for that additional funds and use it. So it must be an action that's outlined in the plan.
Yes.
And even if the action is in the plan, there are some other criteria that we do also have to meet.
Thank you very much. All right. Any further questions? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Thank you. Carried unanimously. Now we'll skip to 9.8, the monthly investment report for January. Moved Councillor Armstrong, seconded Councillor Starrick. Any questions? Councillor Elstone.
No, I was going to second it.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Nichols.
We still have PFAS money in the water and sewer fund. Most of that money was put in by the other end, this end. It is good to see that some of the things down here that need to be repaired are happening. What are we doing to look at the rest of the water infrastructure that's under the ground in the Wentworth region, because it's going to blow up all over the place?
Your report there for 12.4 will answer some of those questions. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Nichols. Any further questions? Put the motion. Those in favour? Thank you. Carried unanimously. Item 9.9, the December quarterly budget review for the second quarter. Someone like to move the recommendation?
I'd like to note the changed recommendation.
From what was in the report, which will be the second quarter.
So
Second quarter.
there's been
Yes, I've got that here, printed here. December quarterly budget.
But in the recommendation it says.
Oh, my
quarter one.
apologies.
Yeah, so there's been an amended report circulated.
Yep, certainly. Okay, so Councillor Starrick's moving note the 2024-25 second quarter budget review.
That's correct.
Is that seconded? Thanks, Councillor Armstrong. Anyone wish to speak to this or have a question? Councillor Nichols.
The Bironga landfill tipping fees, good, we got 1.2 million in, and their expense of only 440,000, so it's paying its way, as I always thought rubbish would pay itself.
It is at the moment, but once we finish spending $12 million, then we move to the next evolution of the project and the operations out there, which
everybody want to be using it. Then, I might be surprised if Swan Hill doesn't want to come down.
Councillor Starrick.
Question in relation to the graph on page 3, the income recognised versus budgeted.
Yep.
We've got a variance there both for quarter 1 and quarter 2. Is this just timing?
Just
And
timing.
Do we reconcile the grants at the end of the year and all of that balances out there?
Especially with those accounting provisions around income received in advance and stuff like that, it's.
And the capital adjustments. Year to date, we're trending at 31% of budget, so why the need for more? And is this external contractors and staffing?
I suppose between Jeff and Ron will answer those questions. So that 30% is usually around about where we sit at this time of the year, and the variations that have been requested are for either additional scopes in projects or for some new projects that have happened since we set the budget.
So we have a peak in quarters 3 and 4.
Yeah, usually 3 and 4 is when we spend the majority of our funds, and then from even if you look at our plant replacement budget, Jeff starts doing that in July and gets tendered in, but oftentimes we don't pay for those ones because there's, especially with some of the larger plant, there's a 3 or 4 or 5 month delivery time on the plant. So you might he might sign off on the purchase of that in September, but it oftentimes doesn't get delivered until March or April.
Which is impacting your deliverables on the projects.
Yep. Got it. That's just one example.
Yeah, no, that's a really good example.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you, Director. Any further questions?
Yeah, if I can, Mr. Mayor.
Certainly, Councillor Elstone.
Again, to Director Rule, the 899 and the consultancies, are those larger ones, I assume, GSD, that would nearly be to finish, that's all Civic Centre?
Yep. That's correct.
Is that right?
Yep.
Public Works is the integrated water cycle management.
Yeah, I think they're also doing. Sorry, Tim. They're also doing some additional other projects in the water and sewer spaces as well.
Yeah, okay, and then the one for Tompkins is landfill design, and so that's sort of partially funded by Rumpay Road, and obviously the landfill will be out of the way.
Yep.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Put the motion. Those in favour? Thanks. That's carried unanimously. Hello. Item 9.10, Quarterly Operational Plan Progress Report. Have a recommendation to receive and note the report. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Crisp. Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Weeding. Any questions? Councillor Nichols.
Just a couple on 2000 and page 212, 216, 217. Items that we're deferring till 2026 till next year. Is there any particular reason we're deferring these items?
Yeah, those sewer pump ones.
Sorry, what was that?
Those sewer, no, those three dot points on page 211 we've deferred because there's been some other issues that have cropped up that have taken more importance.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, not that they're not important. We've just, there's.
I was going to say, if the sewer pump doesn't work, I think would have thought that'd be pretty important.
Yeah, no, they certainly would prioritise the list and materials, the like, and the project's still on the list to be undertaken. We've just prioritised it. We've had some significant other priorities that just unfortunately jumped the list.
I mean, that's the reason I ask is because we're sitting with $6 million in that fund, and sewerage as well as water is going to be one of the things that's going to blow up all over this end of the town. Anyway,
so the waste treatment plant and the Wentworth wastewater treatment plant, they're essentially cleaning and the like with the ponds. So there's no issue with the operation side of those particular facilities. So and there's no impact to slightly pushing those things back out a little bit.
I mean, there's a huge issue with pressure.
They're sewer jobs.
Oh yeah.
So the water jobs still, we're still progressing with the water supply and water related issues, as we can see with the later report. These are more along the lines with sewer related works, and we've recently completed the other sewer pump station in Denton, and that's completed and up and running. So
you'll recall at the last meeting in Jeff's works reports, he made mention of the pump station in Baronga that got damaged because they found lumps of wood and rope and chain. So that's one example of a project that's come from nowhere that's taken priority over some of the other ones.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is it? Okay, Councillor Starrett, did you have a question?
My question's just been taken.
Any further questions? All right, we'll put the motion. Those in favour? Thanks. Carried unanimously. Item 9.11, Payment of Expenses and Provision of Facilities Policy. Page 269.
Thank you.
We'll have a mover. Councillor Crisp, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Anyone wish to speak to this? Or does anybody have a question?
Seems like
motion. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Item 9.12, hard waste collection. Okay, this is page 284.
move the recommendation as written.
Moving the recommendation, and Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Crisp. Does anyone wish to speak to the motion or for the motion?
Couple of questions.
Councillor Starrett.
Would the collection service have any impact on illegal rubbish dumping, do you think?
I would like to make a comment with that I think it does. I'm not sure why it's so popular, but Meridian Road, every kilometre has got stuff, and Sue travels that road too. I don't see anything like that in our roads here. The only comment I've had is from Howard Jones saying that in Dareton or Coomiella, between Hollands Lake and Siphon Road, there has been some dumping done there, but some of it may well be historic. But it just, I don't know, Jeff's people probably have to pick it up, whether they're very good at picking it up, whereas Mildura don't get out to Meridian Road all that often, but they do go out there, but it just keeps reappearing, doesn't it, Sue?
So that's
mattresses and chairs, it's everything.
Context.
Yeah, so I suppose some further context to the report. When we had residents and ratepayers ringing up wanting to book a service, we found that the majority of them wanted to book during those warmer periods. No one was really interested in doing anything in the middle of winter. So we found for the 3 or 4 people that were getting collected in July and August, and that it was costing us like $450 a pickup, whereas during the peak times that period was down to like $90 in some months and was averaging probably $130 or $140, because the contractor could then arrange with the 15 or 20 people who'd booked a service to say, well, okay, we've got 5 in Wentworth. We'll let them know that we're going to be there on this particular day, and they all put all their rubbish out, and he goes and collects them in one day instead of having to make one trip out here and one trip over there and all that sort of stuff. So,
question to Jeff: if a community group wanted to do a clean-up of some land, would we be able to provide a skip under this plan for that?
That's probably more the financial assistance grant one that we'd be able to do it.
Just we have Clean Up Australia Day and occasionally someone might be motivated to organise some people to do it. I know you're very good around the centenary at Dareton when a truck and a bobcat was supplied. And
I think we did give some money, or council did approve some money, maybe the last round or even last financial year, for one community group to do a number of things like clean up Carp Day, clean up Australia Day was in one of them, national tree planting. So we gave them $5,000, of which they'll use that for, hire of bins or provision of bins to help them in that process. So
the local land care group has made requests for a bin, which we've done internally. So the bin's been provided to the Wentworth local land care group.
Thank you.
That was the group I was trying to remember too, who requested $5,000 not long ago, that was signed off by council.
And just out of interest, how was the program actually promoted? Because I confess to not being aware of it.
It's actively promoted on social media and our website, but also in the Saturday or the Friday, whichever one we do, the Saturday paper layout that we do. So between that and the free green waste vouchers,
question. It includes mattresses, doesn't it?
Yes, I believe so. I know. I'd have to take it on notice, but there's certain
Up to a size.
It's up to a certain size, and you're within. Yeah, there's certain provisions as to what you can and can't.
It's just that's the litter that I see dumped, and I suspect maybe it's just laziness and poor human behaviour, or it's that it's quite cost prohibitive.
Well, because if they take the mattress to the landfill, they'll get charged.
Correct.
I think it's about $28 to dump a mattress, I think.
I was just wondering whether that was included in that. And
Yeah, it's on the website. I have to go back and check on our website what it actually does and doesn't include.
And secondly, this follows a.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Just in response to your question, yeah, the website does state that mattresses are okay. It's 2 by 2 by 1 metre square, so it's 2 metres by 2 metres by 1 metre total capacity per property.
Well, that's good. That's perhaps in the promotion we can remind people that they don't have to dump it near the creeks and but could I suggest that we review this again in another 12 months to see whether that $5,000 saving has actually been realised, and also just keep an eye on the stats, because it's very encouraging that people have used it. So will that automatically happen? I don't really want to move an amendment.
No, we'll just bring it up.
That'll come back.
We'll just report it back on it. I mean, the $5,000 is just based on if the same number of ratepayers who access the service this year access it next year. But if we get a 10 or 15% increase in the number of people wanting to access the service, well, then the $5,000 will disappear pretty quickly. So
But yes, we'll get that uptick in usage as well, which will be useful.
One final question. When potentially would it kick off?
Well, essentially, as soon as we say probably next month.
Okay.
Yep.
I just want to know when I can ring up.
Get your neighbours to ring with you at the same time.
Sorry.
Maybe get everyone in the street to ring.
All right. Any further questions, or anyone wants to speak for or against? In that case, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Item 9.13. Thank you, Peter. I note your earlier advice. Request for financial assistance, and we have a recommendation. Would someone like to move? Councillor Starrick, moving Part A or B?
Part A.
Part A, thank you. Is that seconded? Councillor Armstrong? Anyone wish to speak to the motion, or do they have a question? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Well done. Item 9.14, movable dwelling, High Darling Road. We have a motion to approve.
I would move as written, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Armstrong. Seconded by Councillor Nichols. Does anyone wish to speak for the motion? Does anyone wish to speak against? Does anybody have a question? Councillor Starrick.
Just from my understanding, within the application, it says that the climate zone is number 8, Alpine. Is that correct? Alpine doesn't seem to me to describe this area.
The applicant, during the application process, just clicked the wrong section and they just printed it out that way.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Director Canendo. All right, is there any further discussion? Yes, Councillor Starrick.
I'm sorry, one further question. Attachment 4, the 4.15 assessment report on page 312 says that the water storage of not less than 46,000 litres is to be in the conditions of consent. The conditions of consent on page 340 stipulates only 20,000 litres. So there's a difference there of 26,000 litres. I just wondered if you could explain that variance.
No, I would say that was a error in the assessment. We go by what's in the condition of consent.
Okay, yep.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? I'll put the motion. Thanks, Councillor Starrick. And I'll remind councillors that as this is a planning matter, this vote will be considered a division and all votes for and against will be recorded. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Item 9.15, dwelling, deferred commencement, Delta Road, Lot 17, DP 729491, Pelway.
I'll move as written, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Crisp has seconded the motion. Does anyone wish to speak for the motion? Against? Does anyone have a question? I'll put the motion and again remind councillors this is a planning, reversing, backing up. Councillor Nichols.
How often?
Sorry, Councillor Elstone, I'll come to you after Councillor Nichols.
This one has 52 conditions and thereabouts. How often do we check all these conditions? Do we go out with every application that we get in the DA and check the conditions? Or are we miles behind?
Check every condition. A lot of them are administrative conditions and not on physical site conditions. So before you get an occupation certificate or a subdivision certificate, all the conditions are signed off.
Okay, so they're all checked.
Yeah. Sorry, Director Canende, over to you.
Yeah, so as part of the building process, once the planning application has been approved, the landowner has to apply for what's called a construction certificate. And as part of that construction certificate, they appoint a certifier whose job it is to check all those conditions to make sure they're being followed.
And that's nice to know because I know somebody that had things done and unless they looked over the fence, nobody came and looked.
Okay.
So that's
Thanks, Director Canende. Councillor Elstone, you have a question? You're on mute, Tim.
Sorry. No, I was just put my hand up to vote.
Moving things along. All right, in that case, we will put it to the vote. Those in favour of the motion? That is carried unanimously. I gave the preamble about it being recorded as a division, so that is done. Thank you. We'll now move to item 9.18, planning proposal to rezone RU4 land to RU5. And that's on page 465.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move that recommendation as written.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Armstrong. Seconded by Councillor Crisp. And would anyone like to speak for the motion? Against? Does anybody have a question? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Thank you. And as a planning matter, I remind you that all votes for and against will be recorded as a division. Okay, item 9.19, road safety quarterly report. We have a report here, a recommendation here to receive and note. Moved by Councillor Crisp, seconded by Councillor Weeding. Are there any questions?
Just a comment. I'm very pleased to see this report, that we have an officer now in place who's doing this work.
Thanks, Councillor Crisp. Yeah, very good point. Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, sorry, and I don't know. So I have two questions raised multiple times by community members, and I thought that this was probably a good spot to put it in. What is our process when dealing with issues on the Sturt Highway but across the bridge? For example, as you come around the roundabout of 7th Street, there's quite a large bump. I witnessed a car up on two wheels there yesterday. And that's why I missed it. Otherwise, I would have sent a letter to request that we write a letter, but it was only witnessed yesterday. I know last week a truck broke its front suspension there, so it's getting quite dangerous as you come back across the bridge from the Victorian side.
on the Victorian side.
It is on the Victorian side, so it's not our side. Just what's our process there? Do we just
request at next meeting we write a letter to
request data from Vic Roads, or
so last meeting we moved that we wrote a letter to Transport for New South Wales to fix this bridge. Do we just write to Vic Roads to fix their bridge that they won't do because they've got no money and they're not spending any money regionally? But
what's the delineation there?
So the delineation is actually at the abutment of the bridge. So
that is Vic Roads.
So New South Wales has actually have the bridge right to the abutment, which is I think the last expansion joint. And then from that point onwards becomes Vic Roads' responsibility. But I'm not quite sure, we might need to clarify this, but similar to New South Wales, Mildura Rural City Council undertake certain repairs and maintenance activities under contract for Vic Roads. However, they will identify the particular issue and then is subject to approval for Vic Roads for them to proceed to undertake the works. So I think potentially the first port of call might be to refer it to the Mildura Rural City Council, and then from that point on, it will take it through to Vic Roads. We could go straight to Vic Roads, but I think probably to verify the chain of responsibility and who has that responsibility, probably go to Mildura Rural City Council for the start.
Thank you.
There, I think
Councillor
they
Starrett.
might be aware of it because there's a painted line around it.
yeah, I noticed that this afternoon. Yeah. So hopefully it was just the other one relates to road safety. My question on this and e-scooters. I've had multiple comments from residents in Baronga Golgol about e-scooters tearing around. I know that formerly they were illegal in New South Wales, and that the government has a trial in place to allow people to use them. But just noticed, there's been a few near misses reported in Baronga Golgol. Guys riding around with their helmets on at night without lights, nearly getting cleaned up by cars. I heard a report from one resident this afternoon that they got passed between Midway and Golgol. They were doing 60 and an e-scooter passed them on the highway, right? So just something I think we need to be aware of there.
Yeah, it looks incredibly fun. But
it does look incredibly fun, right?
Recognizing that if you pivot off one of those, some people don't actually wake up from those
that's right.
events. So yeah,
I just wanted to raise that just as we're going through the road safety quality report. That's a concern that was brought to me this week. Just the e-scooters.
Because e-scooters can go on the road. Can they also go on when we've got shared pathways?
Yeah. So under the trial, the same rules as would apply to push bikes apply to them. So yeah.
Thank you.
Any comment, Director Gunn? Or go to you,
not a subject I know too much about. I'm happy to take it on notice, and it, as yet it hasn't been raised as an issue with the local traffic committee, of which the police are present. But I'm happy to raise it via the road safety officer and provide some further feedback and information.
Thanks, Director Gunn. Councillor Nichols.
Yes, thank you. We have in place a recommendation for B doubles, I believe, for wineries and so on and so forth. I don't think we've extended to B triples. I was passed by B triple the other day, so do we because we looked at various roads that were safe for them to go on. Background was one of them, and so on and so forth. Do we need to look at that again? Because I know they're looking at B quads in some places, but I didn't think a B triple could be used in this region.
Yeah, the high mass.
Yeah.
Vehicles are
as are the AB doubles.
Road trains.
Road trains, yeah.
Okay. I knew B doubles were, but I didn't think triples were.
Okay, thank you. Quick question. First of all, commend the Council Community Officer Road Safety on putting together the NHVR forum. That was I attended that, and there must have been 60 or 70 people there, so it was a really good event that Barnaby organised. I've a quick question. .5 on page 638, processing and actions related to numerous community requests, including installation of bus stop signage in Knights Road, Riverbend Estate. In that numerous community request, does that include the revision of the extending the 60-kilometre zone to Nursery Ridge?
Yes, it does. So the as you'll see in the next report, which is for the Detton, as a result of the speed zone review, the HPA, there is a number of speed zone reviews that are currently sitting with Transport for New South Wales. Council have provided all the necessary traffic counts and associated information. So that's sitting with them for their assessment. We went through those particular issues at the most recent committee meeting at the Detton Police Station, which I think was Tuesday or Wednesday last week. So yes, it is.
So that's under active consideration.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Any further questions? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. We'll move to item 9.21, the speed zone review in Detton. And we have a recommendation in front of us. Councillor Crisp is moving.
As recommended.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Nichols. Does anyone wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Elstone.
I support it very strongly if you can get the approaches increased rather than doing 10 Ks in a 50 zone.
Yeah, I might answer that question. So, as part of the speed zone review and the high pedestrian 40 kilometre an hour zone, so the areas highlighted in red, which I think is that the main central part of the township and the approaching side streets to the proposed 40 kilometre an hour zone. Everything outside that is to revert back to what was the 60 kilometre an hour zone. So it's
good.
Yeah, so it forms part of it, which was a major consideration, was the extended length of the 50 kilometre an hour zone. So yes, it is to go to, subject to tonight's decision and then approval with it is gone through with Transport, so this is just the final supporting bit of information that Transport require from Council.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a question. So on the map that's highlighted red there, I note at the bottom, community requests that Devonport Road be included due to the use of the Rat Run to access the highway from River Road. Was that included at the end or not?
No, it wasn't included in the end. It was sort of, there are a number of issues that were looked at. They did assess that and noted the concern, but it was outside where the proposed 40 kilometre an hour zone was to extend with the actual highway itself. So it was considered, but not approved.
Director Gunn, I personally think it's a great step forward to have the 40 zone, but then the other areas revert back to a 60 zone, where it makes good sense. Does this have any impact on the other desire to have some of the higher mass vehicles access River Road through Detton past the police station?
I believe not. We have the high pedestrian area which was recently introduced to Wentworth, which did not preclude the heavy higher mass vehicles from
already using that,
which we're already using. So there's no restriction or no changes to that.
Thank you.
Use of that.
All right. Any further questions? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Item 10, there are none.
9.21.
Oh, beg your pardon.
That was
That's my
2.2.
favourite too. Goodness me, I'd hate to miss that. Item 9.21, the project and works update, February 2025. Moved Councillor Armstrong, seconded Councillor Crisp. I know there'll be questions.
Just a commendation to the team that did Longbridge Road. A few weeks ago, I had to take a fire truck down there. The new works are fantastic, make it so much easier access. So yeah, commendation to the team that did that.
Thank you. Councillor Nichols.
Yes, the Deaton to Namatjira shared way, have those solar lights been installed?
As we speak.
As we speak. Footings poured.
Oh, I didn't come that way, I come back that way, didn't I? So I didn't see it.
Yeah, really good. Any further questions? Councillor Armstrong.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Two questions. One, the midway to Golgol lights. I noticed there's a few more working. But there is some dead spots just in there. The lights going in those dead spots, or
where the box trees are, and
oh no, not so. I mean, like if you go from Caramar Drive back up the hill, there's a couple of dead spots there. They're quite dark still.
The Baronga, that section, Drinks Hill back down through to Midway, is a combination of installation of the solar lights. So the solar lights will fill in spots. So we put the fixed pole lights on.
And they look really good.
Yeah, where we could, and the remainder was to fill in with the solar lights.
Very well received by the community.
I know it looked great when I was coming home from another meeting at 11 o'clock last night. Just my other question, only because it gets brought up with me every time I go into the coffee shop. Just the Baronga Riverfront toilet block. Is there a more firm deadline on when that will be?
Well, the contractors are on site at the moment, so they've done service locations last week and this week. They have all their materials on site, and they will be, following the completion of all the service locations, they will start the construction of the rising main and the power plant. So yes, they've commenced that work.
Perfect. Good stuff.
Thank you. Councillor Nichols, then Councillor Weeding.
It's not sort of written down in here, and I don't know whether to ask you or not. I've been going to Baronga every day, and I noticed that it seems like a water problem. The end garden, all those shrubs in the end are dying, and as are the upper plants. So it looks like a water problem. It's just I'm going backwards and forwards off the Wentworth end of the Baronga as you come into town.
Yes, our water team they've spent a lot of time in recent weeks. Obviously, we have a number of trees and plants that are suffering and stressed with the water, so they have increased water where they need to. There is associated and as I previously mentioned with regards to the filters in Baronga and Golgol, we're having a number of blockages with regards to filters and meters and the like. So the water team are aware of the various issues and they are attending to them. So I'm not specifically aware of that particular one, but I will raise it, but I would be surprised if they do not already have it on their list to act.
Substantial sized bushes, and as I go past, you can just see them failing.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Weeding, of course.
With the effluent disposal system, when will that be up and running, do you think?
Which particular one?
They had the fire down there.
Oh, where they had the fire. The quotes are back in for the replacement of the service lines and the like, and I think the only the wait time and the assessment was just to get the electrical contractor to do their work. So, and it's a little bit specialised, and but from my understanding from talking to the engineer associated with the project, that was the only thing he was waiting to get back.
So are we letting him use the wharf one?
No, that does not operate at all.
So we've got nothing at the moment.
So we have nothing in Wentworth. The closest one will be at Dead.
Insurance, is that covered under insurance claim?
Yeah, I'm looking into that. Yeah, councillor.
Yeah. So as soon as we get our final quotes back, we'll know the final cost of repair.
That's all I was thinking.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Armstrong, did you have something?
No, sorry. I
No?
must have my hand raised and I didn't.
All right, so we're nearly done. The Big Yabby, just because I wanted to talk about the Big Yabby, is that installed by council or is that that's the gift to the community? It will be installed by others.
I would imagine so. Nothing that's on my books at the moment.
No, that's fine. All right. I'll put the motion that we accept the report. Thank you. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. All right, item 10. There are no notices of motion or questions with notice. We'll move on to confidential, please. Somebody could do the honour.
Mr Mayor, I move that council adjourn to the closed session. The recording of the meeting be suspended and members of the press and public be excluded from the closed session, and that access to the correspondence and reports relating to the items considered during the course of the closed session be withheld unless declassified by a separate motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crisp. Is the motion seconded? Thank you, Councillor Weeding. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Gallery, for your Thank you very much. I'd now invite the General Manager to report on the outcomes from closed business.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In closed council business this evening, 4 items were resolved. First one being 12.1, Wentworth Shire Council bridge lifts and maintenance, a 12-month period. It was resolved that council, in accordance with the provisions of the Local Government General Regulation, section 178(1)A, accepts the tender from Regional Power Services, option 2, to undertake the bridge lift and maintenance contract for a 12-month period. In contract PT 2425/03 in an amount of $616, including GST, per bridge lift, and authorise the Mayor and myself, the General Manager, to sign the contract documentation and affix the council seal. In relation to item 12.2, Logbridge Road lease with Mildura Regional Development, it was resolved that council approves a lease payment commencing at $150,000 to be increased annually as per the conditions of the lease, and further that the council authorise the Mayor and the General Manager to sign the lease document and affix the council seal. In relation to item 12.3, plant replacement approval on tenders for replacement of plant item 671 Ford Ranger, it was resolved that council accepts the tender from Mildura Toyota for the supply and delivery of one Toyota Hilux SR for the sum of $78,339, including GST as specified, and accept the trade price of $16,000 including GST for the council-owned Ford Ranger plant item 671 with a total changeover price of $62,339.03 including GST. In relation to item 12.4, which was the water treatment plant and raw water pump stations options assessment contract, it was resolved that council, in accordance with the provisions of the Local Government General Regulation 2021, accepts the tender from Tonkin Consulting and subsequently authorise the Mayor and the General Manager to sign the contract document and affix the seal. The recommended contractor to carry out all work specified in PT 2425/10 for a sum of $326,021.75. In addition to the above, contract award is that council approves the transfer of $80,000 GST exclusive from the Water Infrastructure Fund to enable this work to be successfully proceed. And that concluded the deliberation in closed council business this evening.
Thank you, General Manager, and that concludes our meeting for this evening. Thank you very much to everybody in attendance and those online, and to Councillor Elstone, who's joined us remotely. And I advise that our next meeting is 19 March 2025. Thank you.
Thank you.